Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Truth matters, but in an era of social media curation and leaders who lie and remain in power, it can sometimes seem like it doesn't. We all hold conflicting views of self, multiple perspectives of who we are and how we should act. As leaders, juggling these selves is a constant tightrope walk as we negotiate our personal and professional lives, a balancing act that often leaves us unsatisfied and unable to lead effectively. Something needs to change. So in a new book, my guest today taps into the truth conundrum. Hart has authored True Perspective, Why Leading with the Truth Always Wins. As an organisational psychologist, coach, mentor and facilitator, Hart provides an insightful, holistic guide for leaders on how to get best results as a leader by embracing your truth and mastering self-awareness. Drawing upon extensive experience working with organisations such as Samsung, Chandler Macleod and Gallup, Joe takes a deep dive into his own life story, showing the value of being vulnerable and applying true perspective to your most tightly held beliefs. In 2017, he founded True Perspective, a practice specialising in enabling people to improve their performance, reach their full potential and achieve balance. His core mission is to help people create meaningful changes to their lives. So welcome to the Politics of Everything, Joe.
Thank you, Amber. Great to be here.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since 2017, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one web-based solution to make the process quick and painless, the way podcasting should be. If you know me, I'm pretty obsessed with quality guests, quality content, and quality sound, and that's what Zencastr allows me to do. Not to mention, it's really easy to use, even for my guests that aren't particularly tech savvy. There's nothing to download, they just click on the link and we start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-production all in the one tool, you don't have to leave your browser to get each episode done. I want you to have the same great experience that I do for all my podcasts and content needs. So I have a special offer for you. If you go to zen.ai/politics of everything and enter this promo code, you'll get 30% off in your first 3 months when you sign up to Zencastr Pro. That's zen.ai, politics of everything. It's now time to share your story. Excellent. So what did young Joe wanted to be as a kid? I don't imagine that your career path where you've ended up maybe was exactly what you thought you might do when you were 8, 10, 15 or a little bit older. Can you tell us about your early career?
Yeah, absolutely. And straight off the bat, didn't ever anticipate that I'd be an organisational psychologist and career coach. But you know what? That's where I've landed. But look, early on, I think I was always a chatterbox. I always loved talking to people, and it didn't matter who they were or what position they were in, whether they were authoritarian or not. I just loved speaking with them and understanding and talking. So that was a bit of a clue. But I'd say the first real career that I wanted to be a pyrotechnician, funnily enough.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, thankfully, my dad really encouraged the curiosity and the scientific exploration of understanding fireworks. I was quite enamored with them, and I wanted to understand how they worked, but also wanted to create them because they were obviously not available for purchase in our country. So I had to make them. So, maybe there was a little bit of law breaking there. But you know what? It was all in the spirit of understanding how it all worked and doing something cool and exciting. That came to a pretty abrupt end because I couldn't identify what the career path was. And I did speak with Sid Howard Fireworks and managed to get a tour of their factory in Kempsey, which was really fantastic. But they were pretty quick to let me know that it wasn't really something that they could offer me as a career path. So that sort of ended before it started. And then I guess after that, I wanted to do landscaping. I wanted to be a landscaper. I liked working outside, liked working in gardens, and I just thought that was a pretty cool thing to do. So that's sort of all the early stuff that never came to fruition. But that's what my early career story was
Excellent.
up until university.
Yeah, and obviously you've gone on to study and you are where you are today. To dive into our topic today, truth is something that's applauded when it creates justice and shines a light on news that's deemed to be in the public interest. However, on the flip side, it can also hurt and alienate others depending on the content of that truth. So why do you hold, I guess, dear that idea that truth matters, and do we always need to tell the truth?
Yeah, look, I think spot on in that, yes, truth is powerful and truth can really be important, but it can also be very damaging. And so that subjectivity that comes with truth, I think, is something that we need to be very acutely aware of. I guess when I talk about why truth always leads, or why leading with the truth always wins, is more of an internal perspective of truth rather than looking at what's true out there. Let's take a look at ourselves and determine what's true in here. And I think when we lead with truth from our own perspective about who we are, what we want, what we're aspiring toward, the relationships we're in, that's what I'm really focused on and being really clear about what that means to you. Because when you lead from truth as a person, there's this integrity that emerges from you. And in leadership, I think that's really powerful. And that integrity is something that maybe not everyone can articulate, but everyone feels it and everyone experiences it. So my focus of truth is less about the fact and the knowledge, and it's more about internal truth and what's true for you and how do you lead with that.
So how do you believe that we can better align ourselves with our own purpose? And do you have sort of some clarity of how we kind of get there and do the work, if you like, to find out what matters and how to be true to ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that I'd recommend anyone to do is to simply ask themselves what's most important to them right now. And if the answer to that question is what they're doing, then they're already there. If the answer to that question is quite different to what they're doing, then they know where they need to go. In terms of...
It sounds so simplistic.
It is simple, but it's not easy. Yeah, but it's incredibly difficult, right? Because you might, for example, you'd say, well, I want to be a pyrotechnician. I want to go down that path. I want to relive that childhood dream. And what are you doing? Well, I'm on a podcast with Amber. So, not that I'm saying that I would rather be doing a pyrotechnician business right now. I'm happy where I am. But in terms of going down that path, it can be quite confronting for somebody to admit to themselves that, hey, I'm not doing what I really want to do. And maybe that's part of why I'm unhappy right now or why things aren't quite working or flowing for me. And so getting to that point, I think many people struggle to answer that question. So to say, just answer that question is very much too simplistic. A better place to start, if that is confronting or difficult, or it seems like a insurmountable question to ask right now, is to look at purpose, and more so, let's ask questions around values. What are your values? What do you most value? Where are you feeling at your best? What are you doing? When was the last time you felt really great about what you were doing, and what were you doing at the time, and who were you with? What did that feel like, to you? Start exploring that. And it could be something that, someone goes way back to when they were very young and that was the last memory they have of such a time, or it could be yesterday. So that exploration of what matters to you most, what's most important to you, your values, what's deeply important to you, is really another way of framing up your purpose and why it is that you do what you do. And when someone's aligned to that, it gives them a better roadmap as to how they can behave in alignment with it, because it's not enough just to be able to articulate your purpose and know your purpose. You have to then align with it. And what I mean by that is behave in alignment with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so do you find that changes for people over time? I'm thinking what's true and what you're interested in and passionate about in your 20s versus your 50s perhaps might actually shift because you're in a different life stage. Is it possible to do this work in a kind of checking in along the way process? Or do you think true alignment means that we will do what we were always meant to do eventually because it's, it's the soul truth, if you like?
Yeah, I think if I was to answer that, with the affirmative, there's only one truth for you, and that's as it was written. I think I'd be that'd be a bit naive. I think people do change, and I think what we feel so drawn to do at one point in our life, say in our 20s, and we're completely aligned with it, that can run its course, and we can expand beyond that, and we can see beyond that at times. And I think it's to hold the possibility that absolutely we can have a very different purpose at 50 to what we had at 20 is necessary. I think it keeps it exciting, it keeps it relevant, and it requires you to keep revisiting it as well. Otherwise, there's a chance that maybe at 15 you landed your purpose and then you never do that work again. That I think would just feel a little bit empty and potentially misleading. So absolutely, I think keep asking the question. You may find that purpose is absolutely relevant for your whole career, your whole life, and you've really found it serves you and others. But yeah, to keep asking the question and being curious around it, I think is important.
What role does having greater self-disclosure have in our sense of self? And I guess the second part to that is how does it help us be more honest with the greater world in terms of what we present to the world? You can be true to yourself and sometimes people can internalize that. But I think what people present to the world is sometimes there's a bit of a discord in that.
Yeah, totally. And, I think that discord comes from fear of judgment and fear of ostracism. And so, absolutely my own experience in that with my clients is actually working to self-disclose elements of who you are and what you've identified with based on your experiences in the past is a really powerful way to actually liberate yourself from it. And so I call that self-discovery through self-disclosure. And somehow we attach who we are to what we do. And look, a really innocent example could be, a professional athlete or sports person. They get so attached to the athlete that they've become that when they retire at 30 from professional football or 25 or 30 from boxing or whatever it might be that they're a professional in, they don't know who they are because they're a boxer or they're a footballer. And so they get so distressed and anxious about, well, now I'm in the world and I can't say I'm a footballer or a boxer anymore. Who am I? So, to let go of that, to liberate yourself from those past experiences. And of course, they were positive and they brought fame and money and success. But, they're not going to serve you moving forward necessarily. So, to share that and move beyond it, I think is really powerful. And conversely, if you've got some really challenging experiences and your upbringing, was difficult and that has shaped your belief about yourself and what's possible for you and who you are, I think sharing that with others enables you to discover that actually, while you might identify with a person that you thought you were through that experience, when you share it with others, they don't see you in the same way. And so that is a really powerful lesson that I've learned and that I continue to teach others, that often what we believe about ourselves is not true. And you can only know that by disclosing what it is that you believe about yourself to others, and they can either reflect it back as what you feared or share a different way of looking at it. And that is usually the case. It'll come back quite differently and liberate you.
Interesting. So businesses often use slick advertising and comm strategies, and that's a space obviously that I play in professionally to generate images that appeal to customers. And then sometimes things go very wrong and they fall short. And I'm thinking of, really practical examples like when the major banks collapsed during the GFC, brands like Lehman Brothers that have been around for a couple of centuries and or products are being recalled because of a health hazard and maybe they left it too long to kind of intervene. Yep. Our trust definitely goes down. Yep. So from that sort of corporate perspective, what advice do you see being overlooked in those kinds of circumstances when it comes to truth and why? And it can't be just about fear and share price, can it?
Yeah, look, it's so interesting. And I think what happens is the ideal that is created for a company, or the promise, the brand promise that they're upholding, or that they let down in the cases where, they miss it, or the integrity is breached, or products are faulty and they need to be recalled. I think what happens is the organization becomes an entity, and the leaders within the organization start to forget their responsibility within that, and the fact that they are making decisions within that brand, and they need to be responsible for it. And when an entity gets so big, it's easy to hide, and almost it becomes dehumanized. So the decisions we're making aren't our decisions anymore, because it was about profit, or it was a short-term gain that we needed to deliver on, which masked the fact that individually I was actually not leading with integrity. There was no truth. There was no conversation about it. It wasn't even a thought or a reflection. So I think it's not that anyone's bad, but ultimately, if you break it down, when it comes to a faulty product, or a breach in integrity, an individual made that decision somewhere. And so at some point, like, our organizations become dehumanized when they get really large and powerful. Individuals start to be corrupted by that. And again, if we bring it back to the first question around truth, and what is truth and how important it is, that I think if people are honest with themselves, they could really ask that question at those junctures where they're making important decisions that do have an impact, that generally lead to these collapses or faulty products being released. And it was one decision that they could have reflected on and made a different decision in that moment if they were being really honest with themselves. And so the individual responsibility and the human decision, I think, is where that goes wrong, and people just get dehumanized.
Yeah, I think that you've articulated that really well. I think the challenge is, if you're in a senior role and you're making those decisions, of course there's a lot riding on it. A lot of it's ego, a lot of it's your profile and your career. And it could be things literally like, the share price and other sort of, I guess, stakeholders. But I'm thinking, all the examples I think of people who, are so-called whistleblowers, it just doesn't seem to go well for them. So I think the challenge is to be true in those circumstances when you're one of many in a decision-making chain. That's the challenge, I think, for a lot of people. Whistleblowers are often ostracized, or find it difficult to justify, in hindsight, why they went to the lengths that they did. Do you have any views on that?
Yeah, and I think, yes, sometimes going down the path of integrity and truth, I'd say always, is challenging, right? Because it pushes us to really question what's important to us, what's most important. And of course, I could silence myself, I could turn a blind eye, I could pretend that wasn't important to me. But how's that going to make me feel? And more importantly, if I was to do that, and I lead in that way, how am I then going to be remembered? And I think that's what really brings it into light. Of course, it's challenging. Of course, there will be haters. There will be people that try and make you look like a liar and twist the truth, or whatever it might be. But at the core of it, you're the one who knows. Deep down, and the people that know you and care about you and love you, who will be there on your dying breath, they're the ones that will remember you for the person that you stood up for, and delivered on what you promised. And I think that's worth more than anything to anyone, really. So yes, challenging. I would say, is it worth it? 100%. Yeah.
Changing tack a little bit, I'm always a believer that people haven't got to where they are in their life or their career without some sort of mentorship. Do you have one particular mentor that stands out for you, and can you share with us who they are and why?
Yeah, so I mean, with this person, I've actually got two, if that's okay.
You got to sneak two in. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble with this is, I had Bruce Lee was my first mentor, and I think that came from me being a 12-year-old and just so fascinated with how different he was as a martial artist and an entertainer. Let's articulate that. But his ability to express himself really honestly, I was in awe of that. and still am, and think it was so powerful. Now I've read all of his his not autobiographies, but his biographies, and look, there were elements of him as a person that, I probably think as an adult, do I agree with that? Maybe not. But there's something in his ability to really honestly express himself was powerful, and I've always really looked up to that. When I bring it to my actual day-to-day life, I'd have to say my grandfather was a really powerful mentor in my life. I didn't always get along with him, but I saw him as a man of great responsibility and great generosity and also integrity. He always delivered on what he promised and always spoke true to what he believed. And I think, while yes, it can be challenging, and yes, there were times where that irritated me, but it was a really powerful time in my life to have his leadership and also have that mentorship from him. So yeah, there's two.
Excellent. So if we spoke in a year's time, what would be your number one goal to have achieved and why?
Yeah, this question is a powerful one, and I love it because it's all about manifesting that which I want. And ultimately, I would love to, in a year from now, have created a platform that enables people to see themselves the way the rest of the world sees and experiences them. And so it's a tool. It's something that I've been conceptualizing for quite a while now, but it would be really fantastic in a year from now for me to be able to launch that and have that available for people to leverage the benefit from.
And a takeaway thought or message for us on the politics of truth as we wrap up our conversation today.
Yeah, very simply, just be really honest with yourself about what it is that you want, what it is that you're doing, and who it is that you're being. And if that's too much, if that's too hard, at the very least, just stop lying to yourself. Because that, I think, is going to be damaging.
Great. Well, it's been awesome to have a chat to you today. If you do want to connect further with Joe Hart, there are some details on the show notes, including how to grab a copy of his book. Until next time, take care. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.